This is my favorite part of every governing event, and that is the mayor's panel. I love it when I get to do this. The mayors that we have today, I'd like them to come up now. Mayor Karl Dean of the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County, Mayor Fischer, City of Louisville, Mayor Betsy Hodges, Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Mayor Kasim Reed of Atlanta. While they're all coming up and getting settled, I'll tell you that the thing that comes to mind for me from watching Aaron's presentation, so I came to Kansas City to be the city auditor, did that for 18 years, and then got elected mayor. And so I was an outsider, and it's obvious to me what Kansas City is. It's Cowtown. It was built around the stockyards and so forth, and one of the big challenges for the city is the elite were embarrassed by that, and they never, ever grabbed onto it. You know, what Nashville did, which is where I had lived before, was they weren't embarrassed by it, they were proud of it, they latched onto it, and it made it work for them. That's really a critical thing. So, this is going to be fun. We've got 4 really interesting, innovative mayors here. And I'm going to ask them some questions, and then I'm going to turn to you, and I'm going to ask you to ask them some questions, and we get some discussion and dialogue going on here. The first question I want to ask, and I'll start with Mayor Dean down on the end, but it's the same question for all of you, and that is, what are the main ideas that you see moving cities today?
I think, number one, I would say that that the priorities for me as mayor, and I think they're the right priorities, the 3 pitches I say we have to hit every day as a city are number 1, public education, number 2, public safety, and 3, economic development. In the sense that I think education for the state of Tennessee, certainly for the city of Nashville, is the number 1 issue and the number 1 thing that we have to get right to ensure that we have a good future. And so that is a focus for all of us, and that's going to be, it was the main issue for me, it was the main issue for the mayor before me, and it'll be the main issue, I think, for as far as the eye can see in future mayors. Public safety is obviously always got to be at the very top. That's what makes cities work. When people feel safe, when they feel that they can invest there, that they can expand there, that their kids can grow up there, that visitors can come there, that's vital. And then economic development, I really believe, is you got to pay for things. And you want to create a city that's a city of opportunity where people can find jobs, where people can have careers, where people can live their dreams. So those are the 3 things I focus on. I think that the big trends I see out there, one I think is really positive, and I'm sure it's the same for all of our cities, is that there's an increased interest in people living in the city. There's an influx of people. There are more and more people who want to live in the core of the city and take advantage of all the things that cities have to offer. That's a huge plus. Nashville, I think, like other cities, is going through a period of time where it is becoming more diverse, as Aaron talked about. Nashville has gone in 10 years from having 2% foreign-born population to having 12% foreign-born population. People don't think of Nashville that way, but we have the largest Kurdish population in the United States. Significant Somalian population, a very large Hispanic population, and that's been a huge plus for us. I think that's another big benefit for us as a city. Then I think the third thing is to solve problems, to be innovative, to improve the quality of life, and that's emphasizing, as Mayor Fischer has done, issues such as health. We are a southern city, and so we're the battleground on issues of obesity. We're the battleground on issues regarding health. And so that's been a major focus of ours, but those would be the 3 that come to my mind.
And so, Mayor Reed, Aaron had nice things to say about Atlanta. What do you see as the main ideas moving cities like Atlanta?
I think it's a terrific time to be a mayor of an American city right now because cities are ascendant. And what I see is mayors are having to own the fundamentals, which is what I think that my colleague was saying. I'm saying it a little differently. So public safety, transportation, infrastructure, if we own the fundamentals, it's really our moment right now. because not only are talented millennials, young people, Generation X choosing to live in cities and be close to other people, but businesses are chasing talent. So in Atlanta, we have had the most significant headquarters and jobs moves into the city limit, when I know my colleagues would probably share that when we had a big business announcement in the past, it was frequently in the suburbs or right outside of our city limits, or certainly our city cores. Just the opposite is happening. So I think it's our moment. We have to really watch affordability. So we've got to look at what's happened to London and New York and San Francisco, where I think their affordability time has really passed them by. And we've got to make sure that, folks that want a fair shot and a fair shake can live in cities. But in sum, we've got to own our fundamentals. This is our moment. Not only millennials are choosing city, but also baby boomers. And I really think that we're missing something right now, because baby boomers are going to be different from every other senior group that's ever come before in the history of our country. My dad says it another way. He said, conquering armies don't go home, they go conquer something else. And so in the past, baby boomers may have gone to Florida, but now they're stopping in Atlanta, they're stopping in Nashville, they're stopping in Louisville. They're deciding to stay engaged in a city, take all that talent, and continue to use it along with their wealth. So it's millennials, baby boomers, businesses choosing cities in unprecedented and unique ways, and mayors have to own the fundamentals.
If I were sitting out there tweeting, I certainly would have tweeted some of that. Mayors, cities are ascendant. This is our time. That's some good stuff. I love hearing that. Mayor Hodges, so you're from a completely different part of the country. What do you see as the main ideas moving cities now?
Well, the two that I really think about is demographics and discord, other people's discord. The demographics piece is key. You mentioned the baby boomers, the waves of retirement that are happening, but also the fact that our country, and certainly Minneapolis, is headed to be majority minority like that, quicker than people are going to know. But Minneapolis, it surprises people to know, has some of the biggest gaps between white people and people of color in the country in terms of educational outcomes, employment outcomes, health, housing, you name it. And so the big question for me as mayor is, how do we make sure to reduce those inequities on principle, but also for the future of my city and for the future of the region? We cannot afford, given how many jobs we're going to need to be filling in government and in the city as a whole, we cannot afford to leave genius on the table. And that's what we're doing if we are not educating our kids properly and we are not training our workforce properly. The future of our cities depends on how well we adapt to changing social and economic conditions in the 21st century. Absolutely. And the second has been alluded to as well, and that's the discord at other levels of government. That's one of the reasons cities are ascending, is because people see that we are getting things done, and that we are of a size of government where we are nimble and it's manageable. You can get your head around an issue in a city. You can get your head around, in the city of Minneapolis, we are in competition to end veterans' homelessness. We can name the number of homeless veterans. We can get our brain around that, and we are in the process of completely eliminating it. New Orleans got there first. Good for Mitch. And so that level of recognition that cities are a place where you can get things done and where you can test things out, that's sort of the trickle-down idea. That we are, the ideas trickle down to us, but it's up to us to trickle up, as it were, to show the results, to measure the results, and to spread and share the results, which governing is so good at doing, is helping us come together and see what's working and what's not. I mean, that is one of the huge trends in cities, and it's incumbent on us. In Minneapolis, where that all comes together, one of the many places I'm working to make sure it all comes together is in our, Bloomberg Philanthropies has generously funded an innovation team in the city that's just getting up and running now. We're hiring the director right now. And it's to use all the data that we have in the city to analyze it to see that we are providing our services equitably, geographically, and racially across the city, and where we're not, what are those solutions and how can we implement them? That's, you know, that's part and parcel of the future of the city. And so those are the trends that I see.
Demographics and discourse. That's good. That's really, and that's what the discourse is going to allow us to survive and thrive when the demographics change as rapidly as they are changing now. Mayor Fischer, what are the ideas moving cities right now?
Well, education has been a theme up here, and we call it lifelong learning as a system. If you get education right, you get everything right. And when we talk about lifelong learning here, we have that frame around 4 pillars. So the first pillar is early care and kindergarten readiness. It's a huge problem for our country right now. You know, advantaged kids show up at kindergarten 3 years ahead of kids that don't have those advantages, and 90% of those kids never catch up. We know that's going to be our workforce. Most of those kids are minority. We know we're going to be majority minority in the future. We know so much more now because of the power of the web, and the data is all out there, but as a country we still seem paralyzed to make that type of investment because of the silly discussions that are going on in Washington, D.C. of, well, we can't pay more taxes. Well, it's not necessarily more taxes. We need high quality universal pre-K, but why don't we invest in our youngest citizens when we know the payback? So that's the first pillar. Some states are doing this now, and those states will have a competitive edge economically in the future. We should all be doing this. This should be a no-brainer for the country. The second pillar is K-12, and hopefully all of our systems, all of our cities have good programs in place there. We have challenges in our large cities, our urban areas, where we have families that have been fractured. We have big gaps between more guys than girls and majority populations. So again, those are something that we have to address and take a look at what the resources and what the problems are and adapt there. Third is in post-secondary. We talk about college a lot, and we have something called 55,000 degrees in our community, 55,000 more college degrees than what we normally would have. We're well on our way to do that. We're above the national average with adults with college education. But with the role of apprenticeships and certificates has never been more important. So not just a traditional education. If that's not for your students, what are these alternate paths? Some of the STEM 2-year degrees are paying more than 4-year degrees now. That ties into our fourth pillar, which is 21st century jobs. And Aaron talked about it a lot. The world's changing so rapidly that if you're not changing rapidly with it, you're irrelevant after a while, especially with some skills, so that we can kind of grow the middle class jobs that are in such duress right now. So what is your city's system for lifelong learning? So that's the first. And then I would say the second is one of our city values. We say, how can we be an even more compassionate city? And people are like, what's this guy talking about compassion all the time? People love it, because what compassion means to us is not just empathy. It means we respect all of our citizens so that we want their human potential to thrive and to flourish. So it's a proactive interpretation of the word compassion that then leads us into all types of avenues: education, housing, economic inclusion, the discussion of secular ethics in the public realm on issues like compassion, kindness, love, hospitality, these values that bind us all together, but for some reason over the past several decades you don't hear as much in the public realm about them. And why is that? Have we lost our interconnectedness and our interdependence as humanity with each other? I say no. When we have the discussions around this, people nod their heads, they love it, they respond well, and then we activate that in the community through volunteership is one very easy way to do that, looking at various policies in the community to advance inclusion at the same time. But really getting human with our citizens is important, because we're in this together. You can see kind of the breakdown, what happens when there is no compassion or interconnectedness in a community. Ferguson, Missouri is obviously a recent example of that, where there was lack of social muscle in the community. So when tragedy took place Instead of people coming together because they've been together before working on these issues, people lashed out, and those images played out all across the world. How do you think business is and economic development is in Ferguson right now? How about their tourism in the St. Louis area? So people can't have the excuse to say, this doesn't involve me, I'm a business person, or this doesn't involve me, I live on the east end of town. It involves everybody. So this feeling of interdependence is a big idea for our cities.
I think that you're right on the money with the need to focus as a city government on helping to build the interconnection between your citizens. In my column, I write a column for the magazine called Better Government, and in the February issue, that's the focus, is this growing sense of isolation that citizens have from each other. They're living in smaller households. They have less and less ways to connect, and when they're not connected to each other, it's really hard for the city to connect with them and to come together when something like Ferguson happens. So we see cities have always been sort of hotbeds of creativity. It's why people come together to find and talk with other people, to share ideas and so forth. How do we channel in today's world that creativity that is in the city, channel it in a way to improve the lives of the daily lives of the residents of the city? And Mayor Dean, we'll start with you. Nashville's an extremely creative city filled with artists. How do you channel that to improve the lives of the folks who live there?
Well, Nashville, I think you're right. Nashville is a very creative city, and it's creative on a lot of different fronts. Probably people don't realize. They think Nashville, and you say, what's the #1 employer in Nashville? And it's not hospitality, and it's not music. The #1 employer in Nashville is healthcare, healthcare management. We're the healthcare management capital of the world. And what happens in Nashville is with healthcare, it's an incredibly entrepreneurial industry that we have been supportive of, that if you look at the family tree of HCA, about 250 companies have spawned off that. And so you have all these different companies in the Middle Tennessee area that continue to create new companies in healthcare. And healthcare is a dynamic field that's wonderful. The music industry, I think you're right, is the best example of creativity you can find. And one of the things I think you have to do as a city is to embrace that. I'm a big believer in the Richard Florida's concept of the creative class, and the cities that are really going to do well are cities that attract creative people. And as Aaron talked about, you play to your strengths. I mean, we realize that we have people every day who wake up and say, I'm going to go to Nashville and I'm going to get in the music industry. And they're songwriters, they're musicians, they're producers, they're people who do tours. There's all sorts of talent involved. And you want to encourage those people to come into Nashville because they make it stronger and stronger. So we've done things. We've created affordable housing for artists downtown. We have our first affordable housing area for artists, which is not just music folks. There's a lot of music folks there, but you have visual artists, you have quilters and things like that. We've worked to make the music industry stronger by creating a music council to work with those folks and to make music a bigger part of Nashville. And music in Nashville, just so we understand it, is actually Richard Florida did a study of the music industry in North America. And in terms of its intensity, Nashville's off the charts. There's no city in North America compared. And it's not just country. I mean, we love country music. Country music brought us to the dance, and that is the focus of things. But, Nashville is a huge rock city. The Kings of Leon are there, the Black Keys are there, Jack White lives there, Kesha is from Nashville, Paramore's there. You have a whole series of things going on there. And so for us, it's playing on that strength and building upon that and building upon what the creative element can do to make Nashville a more strong and compelling city.
All right. Mayor Reed, how do we tap the creativity of the folks in Atlanta to improve the lives of the folks who live in Atlanta?
You have to ask for help and know where help is needed the most, and connect talented people to the sectors that need help, individuals and groups who need the most help, and really never get tired of explaining it. And so, for example, we have an area in our city near our new $1.4 billion football stadium that's one of the most challenged areas in Atlanta, called Vine City and English Avenue. Well, I spent Saturday on a bus with the CEO of Home Depot and the CEO of Pulte Group Homes, because I had a conversation with them about what would happen if we changed the lives of the 18,000 people that lived in those two zip codes, and why there was a need for Atlanta, in the midst of building the second most expensive football stadium in the country and attracting an MLS team, to make sure that when the blimp pulled away, it didn't point to a neighborhood that was 400, 500 yards away with some of the poorest people in the city. So you really have to go to people who can do something about the problem and those who just want to help. And you've got to lay out the problem in a data-driven fashion, because the future of politics and public service is transparency and performance. And so you have to challenge your folks with data and then give them a vehicle to help deal with the problem in an efficient way, so that you can plan your life, so that you can connect to a problem and then generate an outcome. So we stood up something called the West Side Future Fund. And we're using a partnership between private philanthropy driven by the Arthur M. Blank Family Foundation, which is one of the co-founders of Home Depot and the owner of the Atlanta Falcons. We have a CEO-driven group to make sure that we have accountability. And then the city is leveraging between $30 and $50 million in seed corn to get a bigger bang for our buck. And then, Mayor, we recently competed for a Choice Neighborhoods grant, which, if we win, will leverage about $250 million. So we're bringing a very big lever with a lot of hands on it to a part of the city that, if we lift that part up, Mayor, and I like mayor over doctor. You'll always be a mayor to me.
Me too.
If we lift that part up, all of the city's fundamentals and data is going to change radically. And in Atlanta, we've had success with Tom Cousins in Eastlake, which is a national model, a national turnaround story. That's the east side of the city. We have the Atlanta Beltline, which is more of the center of the city, where we've had $400 million in private investment, $2.4 billion in private, $400 million in public, but lifting people up. But still on the west side, that area is still hurting. And so that's where we're going next.
So never get tired of explaining, and the future of public service is about transparency and performance. Again, if I were tweeting, those are the things I'd tweet. Hint, hint. Mayor Hodges, so tapping the creativity of cities to improve the lives of the folks who live in Minneapolis.
And it's #GovLive, by the way, for people tweeting. There's a big picture thing that I think about, and then there's a very specific example that I think about that are useful. One of them is the Creative Vitality Index, a measurement of the density of the creative occupations and creative activity in the city. And Minneapolis, we box way above our weight. We're one of the top cities in the country in terms of the impact that creative folks have on our economy in particular. I mean, that includes things like architecture and design. It includes things like music and theater. We have more theater seats per capita than any city in the country besides New York. That may not be what you think about when you think Minneapolis yet, but it remains true. But it is true, and we measure that, and I've invested in the budget in making sure that we measure that every 2 years. We make sure to update that so that we know where we are. And the value of not only having it, knowing it, is that we can figure out what those sectors are, we can build on them, and that it's part of the economy of the city. And that's one way, just big picture way, is to nurture that, because we have everything from marquee institutions like the Guthrie Theater, the Loft Open Book Center, marquee institutions like that. But if you drive down main drags in the city of Minneapolis, you see beautiful murals on the walls, every coffee shop's an art gallery, and everything in between. We have a thriving improv theater culture, etc. And so building that and figuring out how to get the word out about it, that's one thing. A very specific example is we got a grant to do creative city making with one department in the city, and now we're expanding it to 5 more. And what we did in our planning department is we worked with 5 artists to go out in the community to get feedback about larger scale planning project in people's neighborhoods, particularly in more distressed parts of the city. We didn't expect, this was a way to not expect people to come to a meeting at City Hall or to even come to a meeting at their park and rec center. The artists figured out creative ways to be out in the community and engaged with people where they were. So a great example of this is one of the artists built a big trailer that he put on his bike. It opened up, it had shelves in it, and they were just these small zines, photocopied, stapled, with handwritten questions in them. For this project in your neighborhood, what do you love about your neighborhood? For this project, what do you want to see? And everybody filled them out. I think there were 6 or 8 questions in each of them. We have over 900 of those. And so in the department, we took that, we created a spreadsheet, we put detailed answers to all of them in the spreadsheet, and that was part of the feedback moving forward for that planning project. There were 5 projects across the city. 5 artists did their own thing. We had a photographer take photographs of people holding small chalkboards, answering similar questions, figuring out what they valued about their neighborhood and about that particular intersection, what they wanted to see different. And so there's these beautiful art, there's beautiful art projects that happen, but it's also really useful feedback for the department. It's a very specific example, but it was hugely transformative to me and how I think about getting feedback from the community and the expectations we have and should have about going to where people are and engaging in ways that are engaging as opposed to expecting people to always come to us.
Well, I heard measurement when you were talking about the big picture and the old adage, what gets measured is what gets done. And then engaging people in ways that are actually engaging and meeting them where they are. Very, very good. So, Mayor Fischer, tap into creativity of the city to improve the lives of the folks who live there. How do you do that?
Well, a lot of different ways. First, I appreciate all the mayors coming here for this panel, by the way, very much. Mayor Dean had a choice today. He told me Sports Illustrated's swimsuit edition is debuting in Nashville today, so he decided to come here. Felt like it was better for his brand. Mayor Reed's one of the busiest mayors in America. Atlanta, there's a lot going on there. Mayor Hodges here is in the finals for, the Emily's List, up and coming.
It's the Emily's List Gabrielle Gifford's Rising Star Award.
And she needs our support.
Love that.
All right.
So, Mayor, how
hear her
do
say that
we...
again. Goodness, say it again.
So Gabrielle Giffords, who many know, it's the Emily's List Rising Star Award, but it's the Gabrielle Giffords Rising Star Award, and there's 6 nominees, and if you go to emilyslist.org, you can vote for me there.
Yes, that's really the purpose of this whole session.
And I ask for your vote.
I was going to ask him for you. No, but thank you all very much for being here. Well, first off, obviously, what you're hearing from each city is stuff that's authentic to who we are. If you try to fake it, I mean, it's a failure. So 2 examples for us. One is we created a word. It's called bourbonism. So bourbonism is the act of visiting Kentucky to enjoy bourbon and local food. So we've got a lot of accolades for our locavore movement. People come from all over the world just to dine through the city and enjoy bourbon. Kentucky is the home of bourbon, as I mentioned here before. So what we're doing is creating a 52-week-a-year tourism experience around bourbonism. So like wine is to Napa Valley, bourbon is to Kentucky. We had 750,000 visitors last year on the Bourbon Trail. Does it make sense economically? Within a half-mile radius of where we're sitting right now, we have 7 hotels either being built or being planned. From a boutique hotel to a 30-story Omni. Our downtown convention center, which is 200 yards that way, is having a 3rd floor added to it. So over $1 billion of investment as a result of embracing our authenticity over something that was rather sleepy but was authentic to us. So we have a couple brands like that. Bourbon is one. The Kentucky Derby is another. Is that a 20th century type of thing? Well, right now it's the biggest fashion show in the world every spring. So it's and in addition to the most famous 2 minutes in sports, of course. But how do you take these things that you had and make them relevant in the 21st century and create jobs around them? So authenticity is one. The second is approaching your big companies in your city and asking them to open their innovation and technology and intellectual property challenges to the city. And Ted Smith's our Chief Innovation Officer here. I'm sure he's here somewhere. Because think about what your entrepreneurs want in your city. They want access to ideas and a pathway to a viable concept. They can come up with something, idea of their own, or they can be made aware of challenges that could be commercializable if the right idea came forth. So Ted approached General Electric Appliances here, a little case study in our city, and GE employs about 6,000 people here. They have all kinds of technical challenges. They're in the appliance industry. You've got to innovate faster. They're competing against the Koreans that innovate very rapidly. And one of the challenges that we all have with innovation, and it can be within city government or it can be within a Fortune 50 company, is we only see the world the way we see the world. And so to get that proverbial whack on the side of the head, you have to go outside of what you do every day. So Ted was able to convince GE to open up. They were very skeptical, obviously, because companies like to safeguard what their challenges are. So we ran a pilot with them that was controlled with our maker community, our hacker community, and GE opening up the intellectual property and software within their appliances. And they were amazed at what our hackers and makers came up with in terms of ideas that they'd never thought of before. Ideas like putting a lightweight scale in your refrigerator, so you put a gallon of milk on there, and when the gallon of milk is below a quarter full, through the USB port that we now put in refrigerators, it sends you a text message that says, pick up a gallon of milk on the way home, or a 6-pack of beer, or whatever it is that you want to put on there. They hadn't thought about that before. So what that ended up resulting with is a group called First Build that within 6-month period, Mark, from when we had this first conversation with GE, became a partnership between GE, our speed engineering school at the University of Louisville, our hacker and maker community, where now we've opened up innovation to the world via the web and via this maker space in a co-creation lab and micro factory all around innovation and appliances. So you talk about turning on your entrepreneurs and innovators in the city to a new opportunity and demonstrating that the city understands this. When your city government can speak the language of business and help create jobs around that, people believe in your city. And of course, that belief is what builds a good, strong city.
I love what you said about authenticity, that you can't fake it, and that we've heard that a lot. We heard it from Aaron, and we've heard it from each of you. It brings to mind what Bruce Katz wrote about cities. He said what he called the Dolly Parton strategy, which is figure out who you are and then be that on purpose. Yeah. And I think that I love that. It works for me exactly. So it's time to engage you. Comments, questions? I mean, you got 4 of the most interesting, innovative, successful mayors in the country up here. What would you like to ask them, or what would you like to tell them? Trisha's working her way over with the microphone.
Say your name and where you're from. Sure. Rick Cole, Deputy Mayor in Los Angeles. You're talking about the ways in which cities can change, the ways in which city governments can change. How is the role of the mayor changing in big cities?
Well, I'll take that one. It's a heck of a lot more fun. I mean, I think that certainly my colleagues on the stage, right now, mayors have the opportunity to be the center of action. I mean, I gave a talk, not this year, but last year at the World Economic Forum to the International Business Consortium of 150 of the leading CEOs in the world. And they are sick of dealing with federal and national governments, not just in the United States, around the world. Well, in our situation, you know, if you persuade me to do something and 8 other members of the Atlanta City Council, you can build a $1.4 billion football stadium. Or you can open up 33 recreation centers all throughout the city of Atlanta, and you can do it quickly. And so what I tell people all of the time, if you don't want to spend the rest of your life trying to change government, you need to be dealing with cities. And so I think cities are developing and mayors are developing a relationship that allows us to implement change faster, and more people are coming to us, whether it's NGOs or for-profits, and doing deals with mayors, which is why cities are thriving, because they don't have to put up with a bunch of mess. And we all have time clocks, whether you're a CEO. The only thing we don't have a time clock on is being a citizen. But mayors have 4 or 8 and out. CEOs have a finite amount of time. Their average time as leading a business, 8 years and out. And so the question becomes, what are you going to do with your opportunity to make change? Because that's what we all do this for in one form or another. And I think that it is being well recognized that a talented mayor is one of the best partners you can have to change the most people's lives. And as cities become bigger, not just in the United States, if you want to change the world, you're going to be in cities, because you can implement your model, you can prove your model, and then you can take that model somewhere else. And the last part is this. The great thing about dealing with mayors is we talk all of the time, and we only have to give each other credit once. So Mayor Dean can do something incredible in the development space, or in the arts and entertainment space, or in the healthcare space. And I can literally call him, get him on the phone, and he will make his best people available to me. Mayor Fischer, I sent a team up to Louisville because Louisville negotiated the most innovative performance contracting deal that I had seen in America. So I sent 4 of my team, he put his best people, made them available to me, and now we are copying what Louisville is doing. And I only gave him credit one time.
That's twice.
And so, yeah, it's twice, but I'm in Louisville, so that doesn't count. Where else are folks doing that? And if any of my mayoral colleagues want to come, Mayor Dean and I had pizza, because we were doing something in Atlanta that he liked. He flew down, we ate pizza, he kicked the tires on a couple things, he got on the plane and went home. Where else is that happening among leaders? And so that's why I go back to the point that this is our moment. I will tell you, I know Mayor Bloomberg pretty well. He didn't spend $150 million to have a 3rd term for nothing. Rahm Emanuel's 2 weeks left to a re-election. He was the chief of staff for the President of the United States. Call him and ask him which job he loved the most. Most people consider chief of staff for the president a pretty good job. He loves being mayor. He'll choose it 2 times a day over his old jobs. And so that's why I think we're at a moment. And I'm sorry for talking a little bit about it, but I tell you, my colleagues around America are amazing. And they're amazing in their willingness to give you the best they got on what they're doing better than you're doing. And that is so rare. In this time of these competitive politics where there's so much nonsense clogging up the system, when there are real people out here who are relying on us every single day.
I guess that was pretty darn good. Great question. I see 2 or 3 more hands up here.
Let me add to that a little bit, if you don't mind. I mean, the reason this is happening, at least in Louisville, I know, America's been talking to you, it's about your team as well. The people like you all, you are at the vanguard of caring about public service, or else you wouldn't be here. And I can't tell you how inspiring that is when you work with people that are making a lot less money than what they could be making in the private sector when they come to work in the public sector. Everybody in this room, because they care about people. And at the end of the day, that is the most inspiring force that you see taking place in America. We just get to cut through all the noise. We do, in terms of cities. We don't have to deal with all the silliness that's happening up at the top. They created it, but we've got to live with it. So I think one of the big changes for a mayor is you've got to be able to speak the truth without dividing the city. And that's hard to do because a lot of people are at different points in this journey. You know, they'll look at poor people and they're not involved with them, and that's not their problem. But it's all of our issue here together. So how do you bring everybody along on this journey right now? When we're in this hyper media world where you can just channel into whatever your particular point of view is. And that takes a lot of juggling. And it takes a staff that's very skilled as well. Anthony Smith, our Office of Safe and Healthy Neighborhoods. How can he operate on the street with former gangbangers, but then the CEO suite an hour later at a board of directors meeting? That's hard. How do we do that in our parks department? It takes a lot of skill. But it's a very gratifying job that we have, not just up on the stage, but with all of you all as well. So how do we bring our cities along in this very unique point in history? I think that's one of the really amazing things about the opportunity for all of us as mayors and everybody in this room is we're guiding into uncharted waters. Change has always been present, obviously, but it's happening faster than ever right now, and we're the ones guiding the ship.
Geez, I was just going to say expectations around leadership and education. And if somebody could do me a favor and tweet, you've got to speak the truth without dividing the city, and tweet that at Mayor Hodges, I'd appreciate it. I'm not going to be able to read this in a couple minutes.
That's really good. Yes, we got somebody else back here.
Hello, my name is Maya Jakimowicz. I'm from the City of Philadelphia, Policy Director to Mayor Nutter. Mayor Reed, you were talking about term limits, 4-year, 8-year term limits, and Mayor Fischer, you were talking about the need to really focus on early childhood, universal pre-K. And so my question is, how do you really focus on the long-term structural changes that so many cities do need to focus on when you have these term limits?
Well, I'll just say we don't have term limits in Minneapolis, so I've already informed people I'm a 9-term mayor. So I've got 36 years to do stuff, which I'm really excited about, which I'm very excited about. But I will say one of the key things that you are seeing all these mayors do, and not just talk about, is enrolling the city and enrolling the people of the city in the projects at hand and in the larger vision of where to head as a city. And when you enroll people in that, and when you put things in place that then reflect something that people are enrolled in, it's easier to build things that will persist and last over time.
I can sort of address that pretty much on point. I'm term limited. In fact, I have about 6 months left in my second term, and then I'm looking for a job. But in terms of pre-K, it's just something that Nashville just began to invest in this past year. And, you know, we started out with an agreement between myself and the director of schools to put money in the budget for that. Didn't do it all over the city. I would assume that in the next budget that we'll introduce sometime at the end of April, we'll further expand that. Then I'll be my last budget, then I go out. But it would be my sense that that is a needed program, that's a good program, and it's an important thing for the city's future, and that if you start something and it works, that others will follow and expand upon it. The rules are the rules. It's just to echo the other mayors, being mayor is a great job. I highly recommend that if you want to run for mayor, you ought to do it, because you get to feel like you're actually making a difference, and you can see the effect of your work, and you work with great people. But I do think you just have to continue to work on the issues and do what you can do in the time that you have. In 8 years, it goes by real fast. I mean, it goes by just really quick. But that is time where you can begin to work on big projects and get them done. And we built a new convention center since I've been mayor. We built a lot of things and changed some things. And you can do that, and you can start on things, and you hope and believe that the next person will, if they're good programs, continue them.
Okay, yes.
Audrey Kanicki, Special Events Coordinator for Louisville. I have 2 questions, and when we talk about innovation for your city, I do events and I think of events, and I'm really curious on what for each individual panels on what happens in your city for events, and do you have a lot of them downtown? Do you move a lot of them kind of on the outskirts? And also, for my second question is for recycling. We are very big on that. We've made it mandatory, and there's a process that we use to a 1-to-1 ratio. If you are doing that, what is your process, and has it been successful in your opinion?
Regarding special events in Atlanta, we try to allow them to be organic and come from wherever folks want them to come from. As long as we can make it make sense within our process. But we really believe that all different parts of our city have special characteristics, and so we really want to nurture that. So we want it to occur wherever it makes sense for it to occur within our safety protocols. Regarding our recycling, we're not strong enough in that area, although we've increased it by 60%, certainly in our city to coach Louisville on what you all are doing in the recycling space.
Anybody else want to take a shot at that?
I can talk a little bit about both of those things. For the special events, usually they are centered on our downtown area. We have a convention center there, we have a baseball park there, we have a new stadium being built there, and we have something called the Nicollet Mall, which we are redoing this year as a 21st century destination, which you can step out onto from our convention center. We had the All-Star game, the Major League Baseball All-Star game this past summer. It went flawlessly well. It's interesting to hear the number one compliment for your city is you're really clean, but we are. But people had a great experience there. We have the Ryder Cup coming, we have the Super Bowl coming, we have the NBA Final Four coming, and it takes a lot of planning. And when you have that many people coming to your city, it can't just all be downtown. Minneapolis is not unique, but is unusual in that we have St. Paul right next door. We are called the Twin Cities, Greater Minneapolis-St. Paul region, and I am very good friends with the mayor of St. Paul. That has not always historically been the case, but Chris and I have been friends for a long time. And so the love gets spread. When we had the Republican National Convention, it was, how do you tie together Minneapolis, St. Paul, Bloomington, where the Mall of America is, and transit is key. And thinking about transit and how to get people where they need to go, including active transit, biking and walking, has been important. But we have venues all across the city that get used when we have events like that, and it's making sure people know about them and knowing what the options are, and that's part of what our Visitor and Conventions Bureau does. For recycling, we are, I am proud to say we are rolling out organics recycling this year. That was one of my initiatives as mayor, to head toward zero waste Minneapolis and how we do that. And we have set some very assertive goals in terms of what percentage of our waste stream gets recycled, reused, prevented from existing in the first place. And we've been named Climate Action Champions by the White House, for the innovations that we're doing. But I'm a little weird about recycling. I'm very obsessed with it, and so happy to talk more.
Dean.
Most of the big things occur downtown. We have an NFL team, the Titans, which is located down in the downtown area. Lots of events occur there. The major races such as the Music City Marathon take place downtown. Obviously, there's a lot of music events that take place in the downtown area. The CMA Music Fest is a huge thing in June for 5 days in the city. We've made a real effort. I'm a big believer that if you're Music City, you should have a lot of live music, and so we've created concerts. There's a concert in front of the courthouse, which series put on in August and September called Live in the Green, which gets thousands of people. We've done something at Centennial Park out by Vanderbilt called Musician's Corner, where basically it's a good place for up-and-coming artists to perform, and those are all free. Neighborhoods, I think, do more organically things, but the big events occur downtown. We have in the center of the city is Lower Broadway, which is where the honky-tonks are, better known as bars in other parts of the country. But that's where the music is, and that's basically that's going every night of the week, and lots of people down there. And we have lots of major sporting events. We're a regular host of the SEC tournaments and those draw big crowds, along with, this is an unknown fact probably for most people about Nashville, is that we have a National Hockey League team in Nashville, the Predators, and that the Nashville Predators are the best team in hockey. And that's not a brag, that's a fact. They have the most points of any team.
Except
Okay,
for
we've got
Wild.
one more. This will be the last question back there in the back.
I'm Harry Cron. I'm with Louisville Metro's Technology Service, and the people at the table are very worried about my question. But I'd like to know, how does public transportation factor into your performance improvement and innovation plans?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear fully the question.
Public transportation.
How does public transportation, I think he was directed at you, Mayor Fischer.
From my homie there, I mean, we're benchmarking right now. Interesting though, we completed a process called Vision Louisville about a year ago, which was a 50-year visioning process for the city. Which, to earlier question, somebody said, "Why are you doing that? You're only going to be in office, 4, 8, or 12 years." When you're elected, I look at it as kind of like a relay race, and we just take the baton from the person before us, and we give the baton to the person in front of us. And you can complain about what you get and talk about how great you are when you're in office, but nobody cares. It's just, what are you doing with what you got to work with today? And so if you're any good at all, you're thinking about things that are going to be lasting beyond you. Otherwise, you can't optimize the city potential. And if your citizens respond to those longer-term visions, that's part of what you're trying to build with your vision as well. On public transportation, then we'll go with you guys. The number one thing that came out of our Vision Louisville process is that people wanted more connectivity, and they wanted that through public transportation. One, in the typical sense that we think about it in terms of light rail, bus rapid transit, but then also the more 21st century version, broadband, gigabit city, etc. So the challenge for all of us is, how do we pay for this? Because in none of our cities does public transportation pay for itself, and there's less money coming from the federal government. In our case here, we're right now in the middle, as we speak. Actually, there was a vote while I was sitting up here in our state legislature. We're trying to get capital projects where we have the right to have them on the ballot and vote for them. I know Mayor Reed has had big public transportation initiatives like that, where we have to get funding, matching dollars locally to match the federal funds to make that happen. So we all want this stuff, but it's like the great American dream, right? We want everything, but we don't want to pay for anything. And public transportation is difficult in that realm.
We have the ninth largest public transit system in America, with almost no state support. But I think the decision around public transportation really is if you want to be a city or region that's expanding or contracting. The good thing about the transportation argument is that the business community is weighing in and voting with their feet. So in the Atlanta region, we just got the headquarters of Mercedes from New Jersey. So they're moving 800 jobs just north of the city. The decision was driven largely by access to transit. State Farm, the exact same thing. So again and again, the business community, when they build large campuses, want an answer on how to move their employees efficiently. So if you're going to be a region and an economy that is expanding, you'd better be thinking about an all-of-the-above approach on transit. We just opened on December 30th a 2.7-mile, $100 million streetcar because we won the largest Tiger II grant in America, and the President's administration paid $47 million of the $100 million. Since December 30th, we've had 70,000 riders of the Atlanta streetcar, a 2.7-mile loop. Within 4 miles of that streetcar, we have between $400 to $500 million worth of new projects, including a $93 million apartment development that is one of the newest in downtown Atlanta in more than 10 years, and a $150 to $200 million development half a mile from the streetcar. So it's really an all of the above approach. Millennials like having options. And then we won another Tiger 5 grant to expand the Beltline, which is a series of walk paths, bike paths that will connect 45 neighborhoods. But all of this is about whether you want to be a community that is expanding or contracting, because you've got to be in the transit game. Finally, I'll leave you with this point. Last year, in a survey of Germans who are driving age, and folks in Germany like to drive, but among the individuals who are driving age, they ask a simple question. If you had to choose between your automobile and your mobile phone, which one would you pick? Unsurprisingly, 70% of people in that age group said, I would choose my mobile phone, which means that there's a whole generation growing up that would rather be on a train communicating through social media and doing other work than driving an automobile. So we can sit up on the stage and argue about transit all you want. The future has decided. And they've decided that they're going to choose transit and public transportation. So if you want to be in the future business, no matter what our generation thinks about it, you got to be in the transit business. We opened this streetcar on December 30th. There's a young entrepreneur that made between $15,000 to $20,000 in a month by arranging bar crawls, which I didn't even know what that was. But this guy is loading up people. I don't know if they drunk, but they look drunk to me. Driving to different bars, getting a fee from the, speaking of bourbonism, getting a fee from the place where everybody jumps off the train, and then they imbibe, or whatever the word is for getting drunk. They get back on the train and move to the next destination. This really goes to the heart of the creativity, and it goes to the fact that transportation is all about the future. You got to be in it.